So we're here on Training Camp Confidential. Pleased to be joined by a guy that really needs no introduction, someone that we all hold in very high regard as Commanders fans, former NFL tight end, 10-year veteran, a guy that we watch on all of the shows, primarily the Game Plan and the Command Center podcast. Of course, I'm talking about our guy, Logan Paulsen. How you doing, Logan?
I'm good, man. Thanks for the nice introduction. I appreciate that.
Oh, no doubt, man. We are so excited about the upcoming season, all the coverage that you guys have in store for us. Before I get to this year, because I really want to focus on camp and some of the things that you've seen thus far being out there at the park. I haven't talked to you since last year, and what a difference a year makes, Logan. I mean, when we spoke the last time, we were just hoping to see this team take a step forward, have a franchise quarterback, establish Dan Quinn in year one as the coach, and kind of set that foundation. But boy, we got way more than we bargained for last year. I gotta ask, most surprising thing from last season to you was what?
Can I say everything? Like everything about
Yes,
it.
that's the right answer. It's the absolute right answer.
Like I think about it, I'm like, I didn't expect I knew Jaden Daniels was going to be good. I didn't expect him to play as well as he did. I didn't expect him to win as many one-score games. I didn't expect Zach Ertz to be, find the fountain of youth and
Right.
Bobby Wagner. I didn't expect all that stuff. I didn't expect to go to the playoffs. I didn't, I didn't expect to be 4 quarters away from the Super Bowl. Like that was none of that was on the radar. So it was like,
Right.
it was like the best surprise of all time, to be in the situation we were in last year.
Man, I mean, I've talked about this so many times that last year was incredible on so many levels. And I've told the fan base, you can't recreate last season. It'll never be another season because it was the first and it was so unexpected, right? So which was more surprising to you? All right, so I got to ask this too. Which was more surprising? The divisional round win against Detroit or the championship game loss against Philadelphia?
I'd say the divisional game against Detroit. That, like I knew Detroit was a good team. I knew they were banged up, but I was like, there's no way they're going to put too much pressure on us offensively. And so for the defense to come out and do what they did and get those turnovers, and for Jaden to answer the call and handle the pressure that he saw and the different coverage looks, different coverage structures at the highest of levels, I thought, that was just incredible. And it was both. It was complimentary football, and I think that was really cool to see. And so I remember vividly, I probably remember for the rest of my life, like being on the sideline of that game, like getting ready to call it with Fletch and Bram, and the atmosphere is electric. And I was like, man, this is a huge game. This city's on fire for this game. And for them to come out and have ice water in their veins and nail that thing, man, it was incredible.
Had you in your professional career, you had never been, you never won a playoff game, right?
No, never won a playoff game.
So
went one time in 2012.
Right, 2012. Right. Yep. So to be in that atmosphere had to be incredible. And then I just thought it was the players, but I thought the coaching staff in that game in particular, I don't know if I've seen a better coached team and well-prepared team than that. Like Cliff knew they were going to be blitzed, right? And for him to make the adjustments, to widen the splits and to put pressure on Detroit to declare, like the Terry screen, for instance, is a great example. But there's also an Austin Eckler run after that Terry screen where they run that same formation, widen the splits. After I want to say it was after the interception, the second interception by Mikey. You were kind of in that same strike zone that you were in from the Terry screen. And you could see the conflict that put the safety, Kirby Joseph, in. And they get the big run from Eck. And it seemed like they were always 1 or 2 steps ahead of Detroit in that game. Offensively, defensively. The only thing that wasn't perfect was special teams missed the field goal late. And I remember you talking about, you're such a fan like us, man, because in that moment, I was still nervous, right? That field goal would have put us up 3 scores. The game would have been over at that point. And when he missed, I'm still thinking in my head, you got that PTSD going like, okay, so they could still score, kick an onside kick, anything could happen, right? And so you're like, I wish he would have made that field goal. I don't like feeling this feeling of the game's still not over, right? We played too well for the game to not be over right now. But you couldn't have told me the following week after that performance and after all we had done that season that game was going to turn out like that in the championship game. I didn't see that coming, Logan.
Yeah, I think people sleep, honestly, on how good Philly was last year. Like, I know we talk, like, there's been a lot of conversation about how good Jalen Hurts is and how, like, that is, I'm not exaggerating. That's the best team I've ever seen, like, top to bottom roster.
Yeah.
And so, like, I knew that like, for example, with Detroit, you knew there was a pathway, right? You knew that, if you could get Goff to turn the football over, you had a shot. If you knew you could handle the pressure of Detroit's defense, you had a shot. You'd have to score a lot of points, but, like, this team had shown an ability to do that. Like, with Philly, like, they are just that good. You had to stop, borderline MVP and Saquon Barkley behind maybe the first or second best offensive line in football, depending who you talk to, right? They have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith offensively, right? Jalen Hurts, say what you want to say about him. Like, he plays immensely well in big games and big moments, right? And then that's the offense, right? But the defense, that was one of the better coached defenses in the back end. And so for Daniels to play well, he would need to play damn near perfect. And so for that margin of error is so tight that I was like, it just seems like it would be, it's not that you can't do it. It's just the percentages felt so low to me going into that game. And then after the first turnover, after the Saquon Barkley touchdown, I was like, the game structure isn't going the same way it went for us against Detroit and against Tampa Bay, where we were getting the breaks. We were holding possession. We were able to get the stops when we needed them. We were able to make the plays offensive. Like, Philly just had the momentum. And again, you see how good that team is when they go play the Chiefs and Andy Reid, and it's like, they're playing a high school team. Like, that's how good that roster is. So for me, like, I knew they needed to play well. And after the first offensive snap from Philly where Saquon went the distance, I was like, this is going to be a long day.
You know what? It didn't hit me because even with that said, in my mind, I was just get 5 the ball with a chance late. That's all I was thinking in my mind. And we cut that deficit to 2. It was 14-12. I actually thought we shouldn't have gone for 2. I thought it was too early to chase points at that point. But it was 14-12, 4th and 5, and they go for it.
Yeah.
And we could sit here and talk about a holding penalty that was missed, but that's a dot from Jalen Hurts at that point. And
great throw.
I mean, you got to give credit where credit is due. And then after that, the wheels kind of fell off. You get the turnover. It just felt like we couldn't get out of our own way. And I just wanted Jaden to have a shot. And it felt like he didn't have a chance in that game. But you get to the offseason and you're coming off of the best season as fans that we've seen in an eternity. What would you say was the most impressive thing about the Commanders offseason?
The most impressive thing about the offseason, I think, was signing Laramie Tunsil, in my opinion. Like, when you look at kind of, trends at positions, like, teams just don't find left tackles unless you draft one and develop. Like, get one in free agency. And so, like, based on where they were picking at 29, I remember at the time, like, I was kind of really knee deep in draft prep. And I was like, there's not going to be a true left tackle at 29. Like, Connerly might be there. That was the guy that I had kind of circled as available for the Commanders. But I was like, do you really want a rookie left tackle starting? Like, can you get a franchise piece in free agency? Alaric Jackson resigns with L.A. Obviously, Stanley resigns with Baltimore. So you're like, man, like, what are they going to do? And I really thought, like, great job by Adam Peters, like, working the phones, finding an opportunity. And I played with Laramie in 2019. And, like, he is the definition to me of, like, that building block franchise left tackle piece, and he consistently throughout his career has been a top 3 pass protector at the position in terms of sack production, pressure production, all those different things. So I thought that was kind of the magical move of the offseason. Because you think about it, even if you do draft Connerly at 29 and you don't have Laramie Tunsil, you still have a lot of deficiencies in that group. And so to get better technically at 2 spots, move Brandon Coleman to guard, Sam Cosmi coming back. But now, like, everyone thinks I'm kind of talking bad about Allegretti and Wiley. Like, I think those two guys are great football players, and like they're going to add tremendous depth across the board. So like now you have 7 guys, 8 guys, depending on like how you feel about some of those other pieces. Chris Paul, that can play football at a high level, and I think like that to me was the masterclass move of the offseason for me.
Yeah, and looking at the division that we play in, knowing you play Philly twice, Dallas twice, the Giants have a improved defensive roster. You have to be able to protect up front. And they talked about wanting to get better in the trenches and being a trenches team, a line of scrimmage team. And I think they showed it on both sides with what they did in free agency on the defensive line. And like you said, the offensive line, it was key. It was paramount to improve that. So getting Laramie Tunsil was definitely a big move because, like you said, you would have been back in the same position kind of that you were in a year ago, which was a rookie left tackle starting for you again, right? 2 years in a row. You really didn't want to have to do that if at all possible. Yeah.
And I think the other thing that's important to remember too is just like, the areas that you're fighting, you're kind of staving off regression, right? You're kind of pushing down, like, because you're not going to be the number 1 team in 4th down conversion again, right? You're not going to win a bunch of 1-score games. So how do you do that? You get better in the trenches. You manage. You talked about protecting Jaden Daniels. Like, think about what that allows him to do, what that allows him to see. Like he's a great football player. Just voted top 5 quarterback in the NFL after last year's season. Like, the thing that gets me is like he still has a hard time like navigating the pocket now with Laramie Tunsil. You mitigate the necessity for him to do that kind of thing. So to me, it's a master stroke. It makes everybody in the offense better, and most importantly, it makes Jaden Daniels better. So I'm tremendously excited about the move.
I talked to Warren Sharp, and he's a big analytics guy, and he talked about the need for this team being better on early downs, 1st and 2nd down, because of the same thing you just referenced. Like, we were really good 3rd down offense last year, but we were the best 4th down offense in NFL history. And you just can't expect them to replicate that. And so the success on early downs is something that he really harped on. And it's something that I know you've talked about as well. And that's something that I think they are going to put a bigger emphasis on this upcoming season. But it leads me to something that I want to give you credit for, because when Dan Quinn was first hired, there weren't many people that were applauding the move. You were one of the first and one of the loudest to say this is a tremendous hire because you had played for Dan Quinn previously. Talk to us about what makes Dan Quinn a great NFL coach and a guy that you want to play for.
I think there's so many things. I think I'd start with, I don't know if this is the most important, but his ability to build relationships with players, right? I think that's the thing that sticks out to me. Like, his ability to be accessible, to be personable, but also know like when to push, when to demand more from you. It's a sweet science, and I think he does a great job of that. His ability to build a culture, say this is the standard, this is how we get to the standard, and I'm going to be uncompromising about the standard. Like, those are the things that really stick out to me. The fact that he manages people just so well. Like, everyone thinks, oh, like head coaches, like you want the next big offensive coordinator, you want the next big blah 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 blah, right? Like, it's a different position, right? It's a different position, and I think like seeing him handle some of that stuff, like going from Kyle Shanahan to Atlanta. So I was with Kyle in 2017, and then I went to Atlanta in 2018, and seeing how much Kyle drew his coaching philosophy as a head coach from Dan, right? In terms of like, this should be fun, this should be exciting. How do I keep people engaged? And then seeing Dan, and then understanding the other thing about Dan that I love is his student mindset, right? He's never mastered anything. He's always looking to get better. He's always looking to improve. And seeing what he did the last time in 2018 to what he's done now, and how he's evolved and how he's changed, and how he's filled in the blind spots. Like, talk about another thing he did exceptionally well was the staff he hired, right?
Yes.
Like Joe Wood Jr., Cliff Kingsbury, and then it's the assistants on top of that. So I look at this and I just say, like, that's why I was excited. That's why I was excited about him. The way he builds relationships, and again, you see those relationships in the staff, and his ability to build and identify and create a culture. And I think those things make him a very special coach, but more importantly, a special person.
Yeah, human being. Yeah, for sure. I think everything you just mentioned that was the thing that was lost on us as fans, because you just see results, right? It's, as a fan, you're on the outside looking in, you don't know the guy personally, you just know what you hear or what you see. And immediately we learned very quickly, this is a guy that players want to play for. This is a guy that is respected by every single person he's come in contact with. You don't hear a single negative thing about Dan Quinn, and you understand why after listening to him talk and how he goes about his business. I think the thing that surprised me the most is how detail oriented he is. I mean, he gets everything down to the T in terms of preparation. One of the things that used to drive us crazy as fans was the lack of preparation. We would go into games sometimes and it would look like we didn't know that the game started at 4:25 or it started at 1:05 or 8:15. And it would just drive us nuts. This team is so prepared in specific situations. They talk about winning time moments. I don't think it was an accident that they won a lot of those close games. They were prepared for a lot of those. I mean, I just think about the Atlanta game, for instance. How Raheem Morris mangled the clock in that game at both the end of the first half, but more specifically at the end of it. They went to overtime with 2 timeouts in their back pocket and kicked a 56-yard field goal that they missed. There was no excuse for that, right? And they never put us in positions like that. They were always prepared. And how he hired guys that worked in the league front office to help them with rules and showing the guys clips. I mean, just the little small granular details. I thought, man, this guy gets it. And that might be a byproduct of him saying, hey, here's what I did the first time. Here's where I want to be better the next time around. And he talked about not missing the opportunity and being ready if that opportunity ever came again, if I ever got the shot. And you can see that he's really prepared for this opportunity. And I think I'm going to be shocked if he doesn't win big here in Washington. I really am. Second year player you're looking for the biggest leap from is who?
So for me, I think the guy that I'm probably circling, I'll give you 2 guys. How about that?
Yeah.
2 guys
I know you're going to say
that are going to make big jumps are McGee, I think, at linebacker.
Ding, ding, ding. I knew that was coming.
Like his ability to cover, his ability to run and hit, like it shows up. Like the energy that he plays with, like there's going to be an interesting role there. And then after, I wouldn't have said this initially, but after watching the first couple of days of practice, I think Tyler Owens is a guy that I would kind of
really
tentatively circle and say, like, I think they're going to find a way to get him on the field. Like he's 3 practices in. And again, like I try to manage people's expectations as much as possible. Okay. Like this is first part of training camp. There's no pads on, right? Then you put the pads on, then you go to preseason and it kind of scales up and each thing becomes a little bit more important. But in the first 3 days, man, he's looked the part, man. He's playing kind of nickel, big nickel, and his ability to cover receivers, make plays on the football. Like I've been really impressed with that. That's a skill set that I didn't know that he had. And so to me, after watching that, I'm like, there is a direct path for him to contribute to this team on first and second down as a big nickel, maybe third down in certain situations, certain dime packages that I was not expecting. So that's a guy that, again, would not have said this 3 days ago, but I'm going to say it now. I think Tyler Owens is a guy going to have a big impact this year.
Man, that's news to us, but that's music to our ears. That's a guy that we were definitely looking for in preseason this year, because Joe Witt Jr. said they were going to try to unlock him, try to figure out what exactly he could do on the football field from a defensive standpoint. We know what he is as a special teams player, but what can he contribute as a defender? I heard he had an interception at practice today too. So this is a guy that I think they are really excited about. I'm so excited because the safety position is one of those positions. I don't know if as a fan base we're all that sure that we have enough depth there necessarily. But if Tyler Owens can take that leap in year 2, that's a pretty big piece, because that fills sort of a void that could have departed with Jeremy Chin no longer being here. We know what Will Harris can be more so as a coverage guy. He'll come down and hit you. Obviously, he's a guy that plays aggressively, but that's interesting. Okay, but I would be remiss. We're talking to a former NFL tight end if I didn't ask you about Ben Sinnott. We got to talk about Ben Sinnott. So his rookie season, and I always tell people, I really think a lot of the lack of production, 5 catches, 27 yards, 1 touchdown, was due to the resurgence of Zach Ertz. I mean, you just couldn't get him snaps. And Bates is locked in as your number 2 tight end. Okay. One of the best blocking tight ends in the league. And so there just wasn't a lot of snaps for him. And when he played, it was more of a blocking H-back type of role. They moved him around, that sort of thing, which is what he did at K-State, coincidentally enough.
Sure.
So the question I have for you is, he kind of, wore down it, and then we learned that he had a shoulder procedure this offseason. So we knew he had a shoulder issue at the end of last season, and it kind of looked like he hit a wall. What are you expecting from Ben Sinnott in year 2? Because a lot of people are acting as if this guy can't play. He was one of the best athletes in his draft class at the tight end position when he came out a couple of years ago. We know he can catch the football. I actually thought the first part of the season he blocked really well, right? One of my favorite blocks of last season was the Dallas Cowboys first game on the Jaden touchdown run. We just pancakes a dude, right?
Yeah.
To lead to the touchdown run. And you should have seen Bates and all those guys' reactions to that block.
Right.
It was awesome. What are you expecting from Ben Sinnott in year 2?
My honest answer is I have no idea. And I think because of some of the things you talked about, right? I think it's a tough spot to be in as a young player when you're behind a guy who could potentially be wearing a gold jacket and Zach Ertz. And I have always been a fan of Zach Ertz, right? But to watch him down to down, like in his approach, how he runs routes, how he creates space, how he diagnoses coverages, how he can win versus man-to-man, he played very, very well last year, very, very well. And I think when you look at Bates, like you say, he's one of the best. To me, he's the best inline blocking tight end in the league. He does a lot of great work. And so how, as a rookie, do I carve in a role? I can't beat out Zach Ertz because of how he's doing his route thing right now. And I'm going to have a hard time beating out John Bates. So I need the offense to kind of create a pathway for me. And I think that's the thing that I think is interesting about this is, does Cliff see the value of the athlete, of the matchups you get in 13 personnel? And can he find a way to show Cliff that he deserves those opportunities? And again, that's unfair to him, but that's just the situation he's in at the moment and it's not really his fault, right? Yeah. It's Zach was so good and John was so good. So to me, over the course of the training camp cycle and over the course of the preseason, can 13 be a big personnel for us, 3 tight ends on the field? Because I think that's how he's going to have to get on the field in that situation, right? And, Colson Yankov's had a great training camp so far. He moves really well. He's going to be that special teams guy for you. But that to me is going to be an interesting question, which I don't have enough data points to give you a definitive answer on, is he's got to grow up not as a human being, but grow up as a player, because he's got 2 great people in front of him. And finding that role is going to be really interesting. And again, he's going to need some help probably from Cliff and the offensive staff to say, hey, you deserve more touches. I remember having a conversation with Kyle in 2012, and he's like, we need to get you on the field more. You've earned that right. And can he show them that he earns that right? And it wasn't like they were taking other guys off. It's we got in 13 personnel a little bit more. And so I got some more snaps, more opportunities to grow, more opportunities to show what I could do. And I think you're looking at kind of a similar situation for Ben at the moment, which, again, I want to see how that progresses over the course of training camp.
So, first of all, how good was Zach Ertz last year?
Dude, people sleep on it, but, man, he was excellent last year. He was really excellent.
That route he ran on the touchdown against Detroit was one of the best routes I've seen a tight end run. One of the best routes I've seen any of our players, receiver, tight end, doesn't matter, run all season long. For him to stem that route, not break stride, break that guy off and get inside like that. Yeah. Create that leverage. I mean,
that's what I'm talking about. He did that all the time. He did it all the time. That's his thing, right? It was tremendous. Yeah.
Man, he was special last year. The thing I think a lot of us fans are nervous about is, can he replicate it? He played 20 games last year.
Yeah.
I'm
concerned about it too, because what is he, 34 now?
34, yeah. And I think he turns 35 here shortly. Can he replicate that again? Now, we didn't expect that last year, Yeah. So I think that's why a lot of fans are like, is Ben Sinnott ready just in case, Right. You brought up an interesting point about Colson Yankov, made the team last year. I think the roster's in a different spot this year. Can they afford to carry 4 tight ends again?
I think if the fourth guy is Colson Yankov, maybe, because he was that good on teams
special
last year.
Teams, yeah.
You know what I mean? He's people sleep on the value that adds to the team, and he's a special teams maven, And so getting him out there with, Tyler Owens. And if Tyler Owens is playing more on defense, like, do you need, like Revo? Like, you need probably 3 or 4 dudes that are really good on teams. And I think he's one of those guys that could kind of carve out a role for himself, beating out maybe the 4th running back or beating out the 5th linebacker, 6th linebacker, beating out the 8th wide receiver for the roster spot because of how good he is on teams.
And that's the thing I struggle with. I'm like, with them drafting Kane Medrano, they're not going to cut him. And so I'm like, is it Kane Medrano versus Colson Yankoff for that final spot? Is it something along those lines? I don't see them cutting Kane Medrano.
I think that's the thing though, is like last year they carried 4 dudes who were exclusively special teams guys, like just special teams mavens, right? And so, if Tyler Owens is playing more on defense, you need a spot, right? So Yankoff's back, Reeves back, probably the linebacker to fill in is a Kane, and then Ballore is an absolute lunatic, So there's your 4 right there. So I think it's entirely possible,
Yeah. All right. You might have already answered this question as we kind of really transition to camp. Who stood out to you? I know it's very early. Pads aren't on yet, even though pads are right around the corner. I talked about this. Have you ever seen the Hall of Fame game in July?
It is crazy early, isn't it?
Yeah, I've never seen it in July. I've been doing this for a long time. I've never seen the Hall of Fame game in July. And I think it's forced them to have to expedite everything. Pads are going to be on, I think, in the 5th practice. Normally, like 7th or 8th practice, pads are going to be on 5th practice. So who stood out to you thus far?
I mean, I mentioned McGee and Tyler Owens are 2 guys that I would point to there. I'm trying to think anybody else. Obviously, Kinlaw looks great. Laramie Tunsil's look great. Just in terms of those positions are tough for me because they don't really get to like show you until the pads come on. But in terms of kind of being as advertised, both those guys stick out. You mentioned Kane. I think he's done some good stuff in man-to-man coverage. Trey Amos looks very good. Marshawn Lattimore has had a really solid couple days of practice. Let me just take this. I'll give you a position group. I think the whole defensive back group deserves a shout out, man. Like Will Harris looks great. Quan Martin looks great. Mikey Sanderson in the slot. Lattimore's done a great job. And then Amos and Noah Benogany. Like really those 6 dudes have been like tremendous the first couple of days of practice. So I know people are concerned about the depth and things there, but in terms of how they've attacked some of the man-to-man coverage stuff they've had to do early on, like that group has been probably the most impressive so far the first 3 days of camp.
I think the offensive line has stole the spotlight because of the Laramie Tunsil trade. You spent a 1st-round pick on Josh Connolly. It feels like a very improved group. But I always tell people the offensive line wasn't terrible last year, right? It wasn't terrible. I think it was a war of attrition, and they ran out of gas because they were so banged up at the end of the season. The corners were terrible last year, right? We were bad. That is, to me, the most improved position group, and I'm excited about the corners in particular. I think we got a chance to have one of the best groups in football. Marshawn Lattimore, to me, is the X factor because I expect Trey Amos to come in and play lights out. I just think the world of him. And Mikey Samer still in the slot. I think that's his natural home, right? And I think he's a better player this year than he was last year because of playing outside. I think it gives him more knowledge now and a better feel for the game. I think that group has a chance to be really special once the pads go on. And I think this is an easy question for you to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What position group will you be focusing on the most?
That is a good question. Probably the offensive line, if I'm being totally real. Like that's the group I want to see them come together. Like, how's Brandon Coleman looking at guard? How's Connolly looking at right tackle? Again, like Connolly's been working with that second group, but like they've got some really interesting depth pieces kind of across the board, that I think could make a push for, if not the roster, definitely practice squad. And then the other one for me is running back. Like that's one that when the pads come on, I just like to get a feel for how they are with the content, especially with the contact, excuse me. So, like Krosky Merritt, like what does he look like? He's had some kind of splash, quote unquote, runs in the first couple of days of practice, but it's so hard to gauge like what's real and what's not, right? Because like there's no pads on, like it's kind of tag off and let the guy run. So I want to see what he looks like with the pads on. All the backs, really. Like Chris Rodriguez is another guy that I'm always intrigued by. Hit a really nice blitz pickup today, Friday of training camp. But really the offensive line, like how that group's coming together, and then the running backs, I'd say, are the two. Like when the pads come on, like those are the guys I'm going to really be focusing on.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say offensive line, because that really in the trenches in general is when you get to see. And I too am going to be looking at the running backs, because that's when you really get a feel for the run game. You know what I mean? So that's going to be something really interesting to see you guys' take as you're watching it and you're out there, you're seeing it and hearing what you guys have to say about that. Give me an X factor on each side of the football for the upcoming season.
Yeah, X factors. To me, the defensive X factor is Von Miller, probably. Like that signing's been really interesting, and then by extension, probably Dorrance Armstrong. I think people sleep on how well he was playing near the end of the year last year. Dorrance, I'm talking about. So getting a guy in Vaughn who's like a bona fide pass rusher to complement those other pieces on that defensive line, I think are going to be really interesting, like really, really compelling. Just because, like, all of a sudden, like, what does Joe Wood Jr. do? Does he have to pressure as much? Does he feel comfortable rushing for? Today, for example, there was this great line stunt with Kinlaw and Vaughn, where Kinlaw's able to kind of run a TE where he goes first, kind of grabs the guard, and Vaughn's able to come around. And I was like, man, those two working together is going to be pretty sweet. So that's defensively, I'd probably say that. And then offensively, I mean, I don't know. It's probably, if you want like a skill position guy, to me, it's Zach Ertz, just because of what he did last year on third down, red zone, that kind of thing. But the most important player of that offense is Jaden Daniels, right? Like there's no way around that. I can't escape that. How well he plays is how good the offense is going to be. So no one has really stood out in training camp. Like Zach's made some nice plays. There's been a couple of receivers, nice catches here and there, but really the guy who runs the show is Jaden Daniels. So X factor or not, like he's the thing that drives the ship. So I'm going to say Jaden Daniels.
Of course, the tight end would choose the tight end,
Of
right?
Course. Of
course. Going back to your Dorrance Armstrong point, that's something I talked about a ton, like how well he was playing. I would say he was the most consistent defender at the stretch run through the playoffs. I felt like we didn't do enough of what we saw them doing towards the end of the season when he was his most productive in Dallas. He had 8.5 sacks. They reduced him inside, right? Allowed him to rush against guards. And the sack force fumble against Detroit was against a guard. And I just want to see them do that more. That's when I think he's at his best, when he's able to get those mismatches against interior offensive linemen where he's probably just a little too quick for them. And I think you can see a lot of that. Like I heard the first day of practice, they had a 4-man rush of Von Miller and Frankie on the outside, and Dorrance and Duran inside. And there's so many different combinations you can play around with, because we were so bad rushing 4 last year. We were one of the worst teams in the league, percentage-wise, pressure rate-wise, rushing 4. So if there's a way we can get pressure with 4, that could be a game changer for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. I don't think there's any like there's not great football analysis there, because like if you can rush the passer with 4, that's what everyone's trying to do.
That's right.
And I think that you've brought in some pieces now to see how that group comes together on the defensive line, to see if you can maximize those opportunities. And that's again like what I'm talking about. Does Joe Wood Jr. have to pressure as much? Yes or no? And if he doesn't, like, you're going to be able to drop more guys into coverage, which is great, right? And if the coverage guys are playing great in the back end, maybe you don't care. Maybe you can bring 5, bring Frankie Lufo on a blitz, get a matchup 1-on-1 with a running back, and that's a matchup you can win, every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So, like, that's what I think is really compelling about that group now, with those additions, the flexibility they have, and then moving through training camp, like, as those roles get more defined and more clear, like, what do they actually do? Because right now he can do anything, and I think he's going to play with it a lot until he gets to that point. But what that finally settles on, and what this defensive identity actually is come week 1, I think is going to be really compelling, and it's going to be informed a lot by that pass rush.
Yes, and a lot of people, I don't know if they realize, there weren't many teams that rushed 5 more than us. We constantly had to rush 5 guys because we couldn't generate consistent pressure with 4. And it changes schematically what you can and can't do when you have to use that many guys to try to get to the quarterback. So it's going to be fascinating if they can generate pressure with 4, what that allows Joe Witt Jr. to be able to do schematically. Sleeper player. I'm gonna get you out of here on this one. Sleeper player Commanders fans should keep an eye on for in camp. As an undrafted, a former undrafted guy yourself, I know you're always looking at some of the guys they bring in.
Yeah.
I know one guy in particular the fans have kind of gravitated towards as an undrafted is Ja'Cory Brooks. His name's come up. He's had, a really good start to camp as an undrafted. Give a name that Commanders fans should be watching, keeping an eye on.
I'm going to look his name up right now. I think Ja'Cory Brooks has been interesting to watch in terms of like his role in the offense. Like he's made some nice plays catching the football. A guy that's caught my eye a little bit, like from his film in college and to what he's doing now is the backup safety number. I think he's 47.
Robert McDaniel.
Yes, Robert McDaniel. Like he just looks the part, man. He's big, he's long, he's communicating well in the defense. When they put the pads on, I want to see what he does. He played corner, safety, outside linebacker when he was in college.
Yeah.
And so he's a guy as an undrafted free agent, in addition to Brooks, who I think has a really interesting shot to make this roster. And we'll see, like, maybe it's a practice squad guy that gets elevated later in the year, but his skill set's interesting. The way he plays is interesting. And I want to see when the pads come on what that looks like.
Yeah. That was a guy that they circled as someone that they were very interested in throughout the draft process. They had a private meeting with him. We knew as fans they were interested. When they brought him on, I said that's a guy that they probably look at, and he looks the part of a Jeremy Chin type guy, like that 6'2", 215 frame, very versatile. Good athlete. I think he ran a 4.5 and 4.55 or something like that. 4.52.
Yep.
So he fits that DNA profile of the guy that they're looking for to kind of be a Swiss Army knife back there. Like you said, played some corner. Obviously played safety. It was really good down around the line of scrimmage inside the box. So that's interesting that you bring him up. Okay, that's a guy. You heard him. You heard Logan, guys. Robert McDaniel is a guy to keep an eye on as we get to those joint practices and into the preseason. So, Logan, I can't thank you enough for the time, my man. Enjoy the upcoming season. Stay cool out there. I know they moved practice up today because it was so hot. I just came from outside. It's already 95 degrees. It's not even 12 o'clock yet. So it's going to be a hot one. Stay cool, my man, but continue to produce the great content, man. We love what you do. We appreciate you, and we can't thank you enough.
Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for being flexible. I know it was hard to get me on here, but appreciate you making time, and I always enjoy doing this show, so thanks for having me on.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate you for carving out some time for me.
LouieTeeNetwork.